And for the people now who are experiencing problems and feeling a sense of um, or feeling that they're afraid, I would just say that strengthen yourself and know that these difficulties that we're experiencing, there is a purpose behind it, and that the evil will not win in this.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Christian channel. Claire McCallan here. I am incredibly blessed to be joined by Rob Schneider today to talk about his new book, You Can Do It, his conversion, and his incredible life story. Rob, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. That's a lot. That's a lot to talk about.
It is a lot to talk about. I mean, you've lived quite the life, but the thing I want to focus on is the most recent chapter. Not that I'm the Pope, I don't exactly have the authority to say this, but welcome to the church, Rob. We are so excited to have you.
Well, thank you. It really is a the best time. There's always a good time to be part of the most beautiful movement in human history, um, and to be a follower of Jesus Christ. That is um, a beautiful, peaceful walk that you're not alone in,
Mhm.
and you're never alone again. So I feel so blessed and lucky, and to be surrounded by people who've been very helpful, and the prayers that people have had for me has been really powerful. And praying with my wife, doing the rosary with with my wife for the first time as we're trying to figure it out, and going on YouTube and following instructions was really peaceful and beautiful. I mean, literally brought me a peace for 2 days in the middle of a very tumultuous time.
The rosary is truly miraculous. I know it's changed my life. You know, you and I were talking before we started this. I've been a cradle Catholic my whole life. It was always available to me, and maybe I was someone who took it a little bit too much for granted.
Yeah.
And the reason that they say converts are often the strongest Christians. You know, you understand the value of it because it's not novel, but it's new.
Well,
Uh,
it is, and you do, after a while you get used to things, and you get but I feel like very much so, like the new converts to Christ. It's very much like in the intensity of like former smokers now being non-smokers and enforcing other, like, I don't want that smoke near me. So I feel in that way newly energized and liberated and at peace.
Feeling run down? Imagine if a simple sip of pure water could rejuvenate both your body and spirit. Introducing Renewal Rain, the sparkling water designed to do more than just quench your thirst because it's your daily boost for a refreshed body and a renewed soul. Infused with natural flavors and a touch of faith, Renewal Rain isn't just about hydration. It's about finding joy and inspiration in every drop, reminding you of a deeper renewal we all seek. Inspired by Ephesians 4:22-24, which encourages us to put off with the old self and put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. Renewal Rain helps you embrace a fresh start every day. Elevate your refreshment routine. Grab Renewal Rain today and experience the transformation. Visit renewalrain.com to learn more and order your first can today. Use promo code ChristianChannel15 for special offers.
You know, it's something I've noticed. It's really interesting time as far as conversions go. It's super exciting for Catholics because for the longest time, whenever there was a conversion in Hollywood, they're always going to a super cool Protestant megachurch. You know, always the Australians, lots of leather jackets. Everyone was just
Yeah,
glued.
yeah.
And now something I've noticed, there seems to be this incredible wave of conversions to Catholicism, specifically within comedians and comedic actors. Uh, I mean, we have powerhouses in our church at this point. We have you, Jim Gaffigan, Kevin James, Leah Remini joined this incredible wave of comedians accepting truth. And my personal hypothesis that I wanted to run by you, see what you thought. I think that in order to make a joke that's funny, you need to understand truth. Something makes you laugh if it's true. And I wonder if the flip side is that in order to understand the funny truth, you have to be able to recognize the serious truth too. I mean, what do you think about that? So many comedians becoming Catholic.
Well, I think that in a time where there's just more obvious evil, and it isn't, and I would just tell people that it isn't equal. There's far more good than bad, and that the evil that is happening is being allowed, and that it is it is purposeful, and it is, that's why, the evil that is being, you know, perpetrated on humanity now, um, has to also expose itself, like you saw during the disgusting assault on Christianity during the Olympics. I mean, they have to come right out and show it, say it. It's not behind closed doors. Um, Christ compels evil to expose itself, and it is being exposed for what it is, what it truly is. And it is an attack now, and it is a time for believers to strengthen themselves and have that strength um, in Jesus Christ to protect us and our families and our nation, because there is I feel a real assault that's happening. But like, again, it's not an equal 50-50 good or evil. There's just enough bad to give good a run for its money, as Alan Watts said, to make the game worth the candle. But be
Yeah.
diligent, and be diligent, and be strengthened. And as like Father Chad Ripperger uh, told us all when he was nice enough to come to Phoenix and to pray for us and pray with us, he said, Jesus already won. This is just a mop-up mission.
You
And I
got
love
the
that.
cameraman laughing too.
I mean, I love that, because it really was. It's like, it needs to calm down, because fear is the enemy. And fear is what the devil uses to make us to not act from a place of love, to not act from a place of wisdom, to not act from a place of what as a reflection of God on earth is us. And so we need to really think about what's best. And I am certainly a terrible sinner. I'm certainly a terrible, I have terrible mistakes in my life. And I feel like I have to be careful, and to really, I mean, the more prayers that I get, the more prayers that I do will hopefully strengthen me to make decisions that are more of a reflection of God's light. And that's something that I need to, that I have been working on. And it's something that it's, it's wonderful, because it really does bring its challenges, and it also helps us raise our kids with a purpose, to know that there's something behind it all. And that's a beautiful way to raise children. I mean, it's the only way.
You speak with such wisdom, but that's not really a surprise. A lot of the context that people might be missing about you receive, and even just the first chapters of your book, the stories about your mother were really beautiful. And something that maybe not everyone knows about you is that your mother is from the Philippines, your first generation in that way. And she had this great comment she made to you, that she survived because she wasn't afraid. And you hear those statements echoed in what you're saying about, as long as I have peace, I have nothing to be afraid of. And the comments about fear casting out love. Do you think that your reclamation of your faith, your conversion, is any way a manifestation of your mother's faith and love?
I would hope I'd have her strength. I don't know if I can have, I mean, as much strength as what she had to suffer through. And for the people now who are experiencing problems, and feeling a sense of, um, or feeling that they're afraid, I would just say that strengthen yourself, and know that these difficulties that we're experiencing, there is a purpose behind it, and that the evil will not win in this, and that there has been worse times than what we're suffering now, and that we're going to be okay. The worst thing you could do is give in to fear. Be strengthened by it. I mean, I would say that even in wartime, it is mostly peaceful, except for the actual attack that's happening. Mostly it is peaceful. And we have to know that, like, while there is a spiritual warfare happening, while there is a rise in evil in the world, and I think people recognize that, there's also people are coming to the one true faith, which is Catholicism, and in all its imperfections. And the anything that's run by man is going to have problems, and certainly anything run by man, including the Catholic Church, will have its difficulties and will have its problems. However, it is the closest to the actual words of Jesus Christ, and that's why I am a follower, and that's why I'm Catholic. So moving forward, it's important to be. Now is the time for courage to speak up and defend this last bastion of freedom in the world. true freedom, but the greatest experiment in freedom in world history is the United States of America. Not a perfect union, but it was never asked to be a perfect union. It was to be a better union and a one that with individual freedom under God.
Yeah, you speak so much about free speech in your book, and it's really so incredible, so enlightening. And it really does put things in context. If you don't mind, if I just read a quick excerpt from the book about,
Please.
because so much of this evil that we're talking about right now, we're talking about an anonymous evil, when ironically so much of it is just usually our own government.
Yeah.
There is an example of why you should care about free speech. In human history, the ability for humans to have free, unfettered speech is remarkably short, rare, and for the very privileged few. Sure, through history, there were always the options for one or two to speak freely, but you risked losing your head over it. Free speech without prompt head removal has only existed in a few places and periods throughout history. People overuse these buzzwords about privilege these days, but it really is such a unique privilege to be born in this great American experiment that was purchased for us by the blood and sacrifice of so many brave men and women before us.
And it was really only a third of them, in the Revolutionary War. Basically, a third of the colonists were for the crown of England and King George, and a third were ambivalent, maybe afraid or whatever, but a third were for it, and that was enough. So, basically a third of Americans said no to this COVID tyranny. And that's enough to free us from tyranny. So that is enough. And this 108 billion people, this science tells us, have been alive since the on this planet. And of those, the very, very, very few have had that incredible luxury of being able to speak their mind without reproach or without immediate head removal or the danger of government. This particular government is egregious in its authoritarianism and its violation of the first principle of our Constitution, which is of our Bill of Rights, is free speech, and they have violated it. And that is something that is, I don't take it in lightly. This is something this government needs to get. This government, the Biden-Harris administration, needs to be thrown to the dustbin of history for its violation. And when the Democrats were confronted with this, the fact that God, please pray for and protect Elon Musk, because his bravery and his $44 billion of one of the most powerful free speech beacons on the planet, Twitter, exposed what the Democrats were doing, what this administration was doing, which was violating the First Amendment and silencing Americans and asking the tech companies to silence them. And that is a proven fact. And when confronted with this in Congress, instead of admitting their mistakes and rectifying it and promising to not do it anymore, they just attacked the journalists, the independent journalists who discovered this through the Twitter files, Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberg. And I really feel that is a great shame. We only get two political parties in the United States, and it's a great shame on the Democrats. So I would hope that they get kicked out of office and then can recalibrate and become a Democratic Party that does once again serve the American people.
Yeah. And something that, you reference a bit in your book, and I've been reading a lot lately about the Stanford prison experiment, is some of the most insidious censorship and attacks on free speech actually come from our neighbors and not even our governments, our governments that are influencing our neighbors. But you talk about censorship a lot, and specifically giving the example of Lenny Bruce, which maybe our audience isn't particularly familiar with. And it's kind of a funny one for a Christian audience, because as Christians, we can be so easily offended. But you make some incredible comments about what is actually obscene. Is it a bad word that's obscene, or is war obscene? Is greed obscene? Can you give a quick overview of who Lenny Bruce was? Because you explain him so eloquently in your book, and I think the story is worthwhile for the audience.
Well, Lenny Bruce was an American comedian. His real name was Leonard Alfred Schneider, and he didn't think Schneider sounded show busy enough. He was right, so he changed it to Lenny Bruce. He was a very popular comedian in the late 1950s and early 1960s. And then He was attacked by the Chicago DA and New York DA for obscenity rules. And he was a champion. Instead of bowing to the government pressure, he believed that what's obscene is not words, even if it's sexual in nature. That the obscenity is war. The obscenity is government lies. The obscenity is taking our public treasure and really wasting it on the death of people around the world and causing more and more hardship and more misery. So he spoke about and he refused to yield, and they literally shut him down. In Los Angeles, he was allowed to perform at a place called the Troubadour, and they literally went in, and the police, because they couldn't stop his performance, they went in and broke all the toilets. The police broke all the toilets, the LAPD, because you can't have a nightclub without toilets, so he couldn't perform that evening. And they killed him. I mean, the DA in New York realized his biggest regret in his life was that he realized they were destroying his livelihood and killing him and putting pressure on him. Lenny Bruce broke down the walls, and for all the wonderful comedians that followed, albeit Dick Gregory, to the other comedians, the great George Carlin, and to the today's great comedians, Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle, Sarah Silverman, and Adam Sandler, and all the ones that followed were allowed to speak because the idea of obscenity was something that society has to decide what is obscene, and let the individual person, not the government, decide what is allowed to be, because what is allowed to be heard. Because if the violation of free speech goes two ways. You're not only violating someone's right to speak, you're also violating somebody's right to listen and to make those decisions. And for free speech, for those people who say, well, what about hate speech? Well, socially agreeable, nice speech is not the stuff that needs to be protected. It's the stuff that questions authority. It's the stuff that maybe is not likable. It's the stuff that if you allow the government to make the decisions on what is allowable speech, they will always decide on what benefits the government, and it'll always be repressive and totalitarian and tyrannical, as we've got to see with this Biden-Harris administration. So Lenny Bruce did make that sacrifice, and I think after his death, I mean, the police said, enough, we're not going to prosecute people for words. And it's interesting because you have a horror film, as I talk about in the book, You Can Do It, Speak Your Mind, America. In horror films, nobody complains about the horrible imagery that would see in a horror film, because they just don't. People expect it, whether it's a horrible slasher film or something terrible. Nobody goes out. I did not expect to be scared that much or to see that sort of violence. However, people feel totally free, like just happened to me the other day on stage, which is all over the internet now. Somebody interrupting me because of words and because of ideas that they didn't agree with, and trying to silence me, even though they paid money to see me. And so you have something different happening. And I think what has to happen is there needs to be, instead of shouting down and silencing, we need to have all these ideas brought up, and then the best ones accepted. What makes things smooth in society isn't smooth, it's friction. So on college campuses now, when they have conservative or Christian speakers, Catholic speakers, they will shout them down instead of listening. And because that is the poorest form of debate, is to shout somebody down and to not exchange ideas, to allow the listener the freedom to make the decision for himself. Right now, we have a government that is making the decisions on behalf of the people. And I just don't, I think the people are smarter than that. I think the people deserve more.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you respond in those moments where people try to silence you?
Best as I can, I try to reflect God's light and try to calmly show an example of what freedom of speech is, which is all ideas, and let the free flowing ideas bring about what this country really does best. I mean, this country does have the thing about freedom is it's not going to be freedom from problems.
Right.
But what it does is it allows innovation because it's that conflict. It's those ideas, the good ones and the bad ones, that allow the great ones to rise and the good ones to improve, to become great ones. And that's why you don't see in totalitarian countries, you don't see as many Nobel Prizes. Because I think when you silence people and you make people fearful, that is happening now. You have less innovation and you have less challenges and you have less chances to come up with truly great ideas that can benefit mankind. And if you see, the Cato Institute did a study, and I think it was just 4 years ago, 3 years ago now, that my friend Andrew Doyle talks about. He's a great British writer and commentator and comedian. And he said the Cato Institute survey had 2/3 of Americans, 2/3 are afraid to speak their mind because of fear of causing causing not harm, but causing discomfort with people or upsetting. The word was upsetting people. And then you have another third that are upset, that are afraid to speak their mind because of that could cost them job opportunities. This is the exact opposite of what Alexander de Tocqueville talked about when he visited here in the 19th century from France, and saying he couldn't believe there was a society that felt so comfortable critiquing their own government, that just he didn't see that in France. He didn't see that in Europe. And for 170 years later, to see that regressing to being fearful again is not a move that is increasing freedom. It is increasing authoritarianism and the opportunity for more, opening the door for more authoritarianism.
Yeah, it's so ironic that in a society that claims to be so happily secular and rejects church institutions, faith, Jesus Christ, and they say, we don't want to feel shame, we want total autonomy and freedom. Ironically, we're being controlled by shame, but we're scared of being shamed, not in front of God, but in front of each other.
Yes, but when you try to please the world, it is different than doing something to please God. And I think the armor of God is required now to stand and to oppose things that are the war against family. There has been a long time war against family. There has been a Marxist, which is a godless attack on Christianity. Karl Marx, when he didn't invent communism, he did group together some terrible ideas to specifically attack the Church of Jesus Christ, to undermine it and destroy it, to create a godless, hopeless promise of utopia, which just led to the massacre and murder of 150 million human beings. So we need to be very careful, because the great deceiver is working his way to once again making people fearful, to make a decision that could increase the likelihood of undermining the great principles of freedom that this country has stood for. And it has stood for freedom under God. And that is at risk at this point.
Everything you're saying is so backed up by the emotional response I have hearing you say these things, but also when I was reading your book, I had to stop a couple times and say, and this is, hopefully this tantalizes our audiences at home and makes them want to buy a book because it's phenomenal. I had to stop a couple times and I said, I can't believe they're letting him write this. I can't believe that someone said okay to publishing it, because everything is so censored, and I'm so used to, because you go after all sides as well.
What happens is that God works in mysterious ways, and that's why like the God is forcing evil to expose itself. And that's why when big pharma, when they were able to close churches yet keep open marijuana stores and strip clubs and liquor stores, the message was very clear. The message is very clear to me that the truth is being silenced, and they're trying to silence the word of God. And that was a slap. Sometimes God does a whisper. The word inspire comes from the Greek, and it doesn't say, God doesn't tell you specifically. And inspire is simply, if you go to the Greek, it means God's breath. It's not a whisper. It's not a words. It's not even a whisper. It is a. And so this inspiration that we're feeling now is less of a whisper and more direct, because I think now is the time to really stand up. And now is the potential. Now is the potential to bring so many more people to Christ. Now is the potential to really stand up and decide, when God gives you problems like we're experiencing, as one of my great friend Dino, he's a wonderful Catholic. He said, "Hey, congratulations. These are problems. These are opportunities. These are opportunities to strengthen our faith. These are opportunities to strengthen our family. These are opportunities to reinvigorate our belief in Jesus Christ. These are our opportunities to come and bring other people." And that is the challenge for someone who for me has been such a wanderer in his life and really has to finish my studies and continue, and in spite of, the attacks that I'm receiving, because it's no coincidence that when you will continue to be challenged in your life, and you'll have more challenges when you say, "I'm a believer in Jesus Christ." Christianity now is under attack, and you see it. They didn't make, the French didn't make fun of Islam under it at the Olympics. They went after the followers of Jesus Christ. It was insulting, it was disgusting, and it was a provocation.
Mhm.
And it was something that was demeaning, and it was not an accident. They were happy to do it. And you just have to look it up and realize that these people were insulting and disrespectful. And that is something that also people were waking up to that too. That had a purpose. And we need to just be vigilant and get closer and pray more and figure out exactly how to say the rosary.
Amen. And the rosary, for if you take nothing else from this conversation, know that Rob and I are both telling you both to just all go pray the rosary. This book is really so fantastic. I really
Thank you.
enjoyed it. There's so much to get out of each of these chapters. You've lived so much life, so you get to learn about SNL. You get these history lessons, not just in American history, but also about comedians like Lenny Bruce. And I think it's going to challenge everyone, whether you're coming from a secular or faith-based place. As I said, no one is safe. You go after any and all establishment that benefits from controlling the average person.
Thank you.
I've got to wonder, when we got on the call, I was like, "Oh, your home is beautiful." And you said, "Yeah, I'm one of those 40-year overnight success stories," which was a great line.
And by the way, this opportunity to write this book, I realized that I may never get this again. But what happened was, just like with Napoleon, his empire stretched so far, and he thought he could go all the way to Moscow, but they had already gotten wise to him. And many of us in the medical freedom and freedom movement we're hoping beyond and praying that the pharmaceutical industry and the powers and the authoritarians would stretch themselves so thin and push things so far that it would expose themselves. And just like the Cossacks realized that the French when they did their armies and expanded their empire, would live off the land. So what they did was they burned everything. So they had nothing. And when they got to Moscow, it was empty. And so in the same time that when the powers that be and tried to shut down the world and enslave us, they ran up against people who were woken, have become awake, and have strengthened our resolve to continue to be free and to continue to with our beliefs and to strengthen our beliefs. This again, it's just a challenge. And this challenge is an opportunity. Problems are an opportunity. How do you rise to them? How do you interpret them? And how do you now that we have this question, we can decide again what kind of government we want. Do we not want to have prayer in schools? Do we not want to, or can we go back to what this country was founded on, a nation under God? I think that question can only be brought up because of the attack on our K through 12, which is what's happening through this Marxist attack on education and academia. They're no longer teaching people how to think critically or to come to their own conclusions. They're just cranking out advocates for a particular ideology that is leftist and that is woke, which is just another word for Marxism, godless Marxism dressed up as manners.
Yeah, but I agree with you that the tide will be turning because they've made the mistake of too openly coming for the children, and that stirs something within us, something protective for a lot of us. And
Oh yeah, no, I will tell you that not Generation Z, but the one before that, these ones who have little kids now,
yeah,
they don't like what's happening in their schools, and they are not going to put up with it. And so it's interesting because California is pushing and continuing to take away the rights of parents and to undermine that, to secretly make decisions without parental approval for minors. There's nothing more evil than that. And they have to have enough pushback. And it's good because people are now stepping up and showing up at those school board meetings. That's why it's so important, like why this administration needs to be thrown to the dustbin of history, this Biden-Harris administration, because according to Moms of Liberty, which I'm going to be speaking there tomorrow night in Washington, D.C., the federal government wants to expand the power over public schools. And whether you have enough money to send your kids to private school or a wonderful Catholic school, and I hope you do, most of American children are being educated in public schools. And that education is becoming more and more indoctrinated into that same leftist ideology. And what they would, the Department of Education needs to be abolished. And we need to have not an increase in federal money being poured into the public schools to, again, indoctrinate our children. They want to double it. And if they do double it from 13% to 26%, then we will no longer, the school boards won't mean anything because the federal government will be telling exactly what they want kids to be indoctrinated into, not thinking, but to crank out another generation of ideologues for a partisan, closed-minded thought system, which is woke, which is Marxist.
You're clearly so bright and so well educated on these topics, and you're in this space. I mean, especially post-book, you can do, in many ways, I'd say, anything you want. Do you want to keep making funny movies? Do you want to keep writing books? Do you want to spend the rest of your life doing freedom activism? What do you think is next for you? Because from where I stand, it seems like it could be anything.
Well, thank you. I don't know, but I am praying, and I mean, I am open to whatever happens. I do feel compelled to speak my mind now, and I do feel compelled to write this book. And I do think there was a window where this book could not have been written. 4 years ago would not have been published. 10 years ago would not have been allowed to be published. So there is a window here, and so I do think there's a chance to really to do something. I don't know what it is, but I do pray for it, and I want to make this beautiful movie about the Shroud of Turin, and it's really beautiful because it's the Shroud of Turin is the receipt of what Jesus Christ paid for all of us, and that's a proof, that receipt, and for it to be all over the world last week. That these new tests of X-rays proved it's the 2,000-year-old piece of linen. The only cloth that possibly could have survived would be linen, and it was Joseph of Amara. What's it? The Amarathea or Joseph of who got the body, asked Pontius Pilate for the body, and then covered it in this Egyptian linen. That's the only reason that survived. And to me, what's so miraculous about this, and when I was working on the script for the true story from Joseph Marino and his wife, Benford, that this was such a special, incredible thing. And the idea that the original scientists thought this was a fake, a medieval forgery. The guy, it's a negative on there. It would have the guy 500 to 700 years ago, 800 years ago, would have had to have thought in his mind of this new invention, which would be photography, which is an inverse of that. So what I believe happened with this is just like when a human egg is fertilized and you have a human being there's a flash of light that you could see. Just go on the internet and you can see it. That flash of light is there's a human being. There's a reflection of God in human form, human being, and there's a flash of light. And I believe that when Christ was risen on the third day, that flash of light is the same one as that fertilized human egg that becomes a human being instantly. And that flash of light is the reflection. And that photographic image is only on the very top layers of it. That is the receipt of the price that Jesus Christ paid for all of us.
I mean, I'm going to be praying that this project comes to fruition because I think we could really all use something like that. And those are the stories that reach not just the choir that's so used to being preached to, but also can reach these new audiences. It's an exciting time for Catholic and Christian filmmaking. We had Jesus Thirst, we have The Chosen. We have obviously the passion, all of this is going into it. I'm going to be keeping you, and I know we all will, in our prayers as you embark
Thank you. I want to make it, and I hope so. And someone who's very, very new, embryonic stage of Catholicism, uh,
on.
I need it. I need it. And I want to, I don't know where this is going to lead, what's going to happen, but I really do feel like, the challenges and the, for every step I make, I find myself getting more challenged, and that's okay. But I will say, like my wife, Patricia, and I, when we did the rosary the other night, I felt a sense of peace that I don't know if I've ever felt that when I needed it most. And it was, and then when I went on Tucker Carlson after that, and it was, the response from that was breathtaking. And I
Beautiful
just,
interview.
I just hope that, that I can continue to be a positive influence and whatever God has in store for me, it's going to happen. And I just have to take my own pride and willfulness, my own anger, and just put it aside and just let resentments and grievances go and just pray and really try to be that reflection that I would like to be, that I'm
Right.
called, that Jesus calls for all of us to do.
You've handled yourself with an incredible amount of grace, and it's funny you refer to yourself as an embryonic Catholic. Maybe you're in your flash of light stage too right now.
I think so. I've failed miserably. I've been an angry person in my life. I've had a lot of problems and grievances and bitterness and resentment. And those are the things, it's the easy place to go. And you have to rise to your higher nature. There is an interesting thing that you go back to, what you can learn from different spirituality, from different religions, and you can, and there's some that are there's very few talks about like spiritual levels. And it's an interesting idea that I got from another Christian, Dr. M. Scott Peck. And he talked about that. There's 8 in the Hindu religion. And basically you can cut it to 4, which is this, and Alan Watts talks about this as well. There is that prisoner, that this addict part of you, to give into anger, to give into the lower part of yourself, to not be able to delay gratification, to go out, to be able to be, and that needs to be in a jail cell. You can't kill it. It's always going to be part of you, but that part needs to be controlled. And then there's the second part, which is people who come out of that drug addiction, whatever, they become fundamentalists in their thinking and don't allow new ideas in, but they at least they need to have some controls in their life. Otherwise, they think they'll go back to that lower level again. And then if you grow up in that, you become this questioning, searching person who wants to find answers in life and look for things and be that searcher and be that person who goes off into the wilderness to find and be a leader. And then the fourth part, which is mystical, and it's like what the prophets have achieved, which is to become a healer and to be someone who can speak and to bring peace to others and talk about and be an example of Jesus Christ, or be an example for others. And I think what's really beautiful is when you get to that level, for a better description, I can't think of one. When you get to that point of a healer, mystic, follower, that's just the beginning. And I think it's just the beginning. So I feel I'm just at the beginning, and I have a lot of work to do, and I have a lot of work on myself that I got to continually do. And I need a lot more prayers. I need a lot more doing the rosary with my wife, Patricia, and I need to finish my studies with my priest, Father Passo. But it is in this time that I do feel strengthened, and I don't feel like I'm walking this journey alone.
Oh, we are just so excited to have you. You are never alone. You've got a whole big church cheering for you. We are so excited to have you in our church.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for your incredible work. I'll let you go. When can people buy your book? Where can they buy it? Let's plug it one more time. It really is, from the bottom of my heart, such a fun educational read. You've all got to go get a copy. Get a copy for yourself. Get a copy for someone who you think will enjoy it.
Thank you.
Get a copy for someone who you think won't enjoy it, who needs to have their mind opened a little bit.
This was written also during, and a lot of words of it were written during the time of when I was still in that, kind of angered, righteous anger, hopefully, for what was happening for this what I thought was the tyrannical authoritarian encroachment on our liberties here in the United States and around the world. And we visited that. And so I apologize for any bad language that's in this book, and there is. But the intention is to bring awareness. And I think people can go and read it and have a good laugh and recognize some of these things, and recognize also how unique God's plan is to allow this challenge that's happening for all of us, and allow this book to even get written. And you can go to Amazon and you could order the book. It's going to be delivered. It'll be released September 24th. And there's an audio version if you want to hear my voice. And but thank you for this opportunity, and I appreciate your prayers. I need them all.
You've got him. You've got him. Everyone, we are praying the rosary with and for our new friend, Rob Schneider. And his new book comes out at the end of September. You can pre-order it on Amazon. That's always important. I know you're going to love it. I did. Rob, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Claire. Okay, we'll talk soon. Thank you. Bye now.